Hello folks, I'm making this video to clear up a couple points that have come up here and there and also a little bit of look ahead. Alright, so this last week we've been doing ANOVA, 2 chapters, one factor and more than one factor ANOVAs. And from what I've seen in the homework, it seemed like it was pretty straightforward for most people. There are a few questions that I'm going to address. But I'm hoping that my interpretation is right. I don't really know that. I can't see behind the scenes how hard it was for you to get to the homework answers that you did. But it seemed more straightforward to me. And if that's the case, if you experienced it that way, that's kind of the way it's supposed to be, because even though this is the most complex material, it's building on the previous material in a way that the basic concepts are not new. It's just different ways of more complex ways of doing the same kind of thing we were doing before. And that's kind of how it goes with statistics. One of the kinds of statistics I'm going to talk a little bit about in this video is an ANOVA. And that's one that you haven't done before. We're not even going to do it in this class unless you choose to do it for the last module. But it's just, there's a C in there besides ANOVA. It's just one more step complex, but it really is the same idea as things we've already done. And a lot of the statistics that you might eventually use are like that. Not really changing the basic idea, but building on the complexity depending on the specific situation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Alright, but let's get down to some things that actually came up. So some people had trouble running the two-factor ANOVA and SPSS. The book provides a formula for doing it, and if you follow that, it's pretty straightforward. But I do realize that when I look at the same thing on my Mac, the menu items are slightly different. So that could be what caused some of you some challenge there. So if I go to Analyze, to do a two-factor ANOVA, I'm going to go to Analyze, General Linear Model, and then Univariate. I think on the PC, it's Univariate is the choice that you select from the main model, from the main menu. Right. So then what I do, I'm looking at data set 2 in chapter 14. When I do this model, pain is the dependent, the outcome variable for problem number 3, and then severity and treatment are the factors. All right. So question would be, and I think Sal kind of skips over this, do these severity and treatment go into fixed factors or random factors or one of each? And the answer to that is it's very complex beyond this course, and frankly, when I've read the material from multiple authors on how to make this decision, it's very confusing, and the answer often comes down to different people will come up with different answers, and the context matters. So if you get into a situation where you're actually doing research of your own and that you want to publish or present in a dissertation or in some other more formal means, and you really need to know the exact right answer, you'd have to dig in with your advisor on that question. So for now, I think the simplest is just to put them both as fixed factors. When you run the two-factor ANOVA, you want to make sure you go to Options and select at least descriptive statistics. I usually like to see effect size whenever I can, so I selected that. And then you run it. I already have, so I'll bring up the output. Let me run it again because I can't find the output. Alright, so there it is, and you always want to inspect the means as one of your first things that you're going to do. To see if the means reflect what makes sense to you based on the data, because this is where you might find some error in the way you've done something with analysis by inspecting the means. And also, it probably gives you an indication before you look at the actual F value and the statistical significance of whether or not you should expect to find it and how you will interpret that once you do see those numbers. So for example, I'm noticing some pretty big differences between placebo and the other drugs. So I'm thinking maybe I'll expect to find statistical significance on treatment. But when I look at severity versus mild, I don't know, the numbers don't look so much different to me. So I'm kind of thinking like that and trying to get the interpretation before I actually look at the more official. All right, so when we're looking at this, you are going to report the F values if you do some reporting on it. But it's really this column that you're looking at. And you're looking at severity and treatment and the interaction between severity and treatment. You're not looking at these two items up here. They don't have meaning for interpretation of the questions. All right, so severity. Significance 0.848, so obviously cannot reject the null hypothesis. Treatment, yes, 0.00. We're going to reject the null hypothesis for treatment. Treatment does make a statistically significant difference, but there is no interaction between severity and treatment. All right, so that's the basic way that you do the 2 or more factor ANOVA.